in here University. This Salvatore was born in July 1931, and he attended St. John's School as a lawyer. After he went to the prestigious grammar school in Lagos, EMS Grammar School. And that was when the school was still absorbed. I'm not talking of those of you who went to Malaysia. Popularly known for his football commentaries in the 60s and 70s. He started his broadcasting career with the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation, which is now known as the FRCN. He rose through a bit of hard work and exemplary performance to the post of Controller of National Programs, Controller Western Zone, Zonal Director FRCN, and Director of Facilitation Headquarters, position where he was until he retired. And I dare say here that he is one of the very, very few Nigerians that went to school. Very few of them attended that institution. I am talking of the National Institute of Quality and Strategic Studies. Mr. also presently is the Managing Director in Lagos State. He was at Oyo State until he was brought to Lagos. And since he arrived in Lagos, hardly he would turn on the television on Channel 7 or Channel 8 or Radio Lagos that would not hear his voice or see his face. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in recognition of Chief Bishora's selfless and dedicated service to the nation, he holds the national honor of member of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, MFR. Chief Bishora's is married with children. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Iseko!
For the interesting introduction of our chairman for today. If he wants a broadcaster, always a broadcaster. I'm not surprised when he said he snatched the microphone away from him. Because Oba Adeolu, we all know him as Titoli, he once said that I'm not naira rich, but I'm still rich. Broadcasting has given me that. That is what makes broadcasting makes people. And we are all happy to be broadcasters. Those of us that the profession has been handed down. We continue now as we invite our chairman to introduce our guest speaker for today. Mr. Chairman.
That gives me out to take away that amount of practice. Very good speaker. The Secretary, the Lagos State Government, Professor Abaseko. The guest speaker, Dr. Mobolaji Johnson, as a deliberately omitted chairman, and Caesar to ring the bell. You have a Mobolaji Johnson in government. This is not what I'm referring to, but is Chairman Johnson, Mobolaji Johnson, civil, not military. To the rest of Chairman, the actual rest of us, and I'm saying that there's a lot of trepidation, professors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start out with my profound gratitude to the Secretary of the State Government, and the people of particularly the public service, for giving me this opportunity to be chairman at this occasion. We all know the role of the public or what you as the civil servant. You are to be heard and not to be seen. And I was that posture for many years. So when we decide to get elected sometime into an article that was the chairman of this office, I said to him, as a policy are limited to two major areas. Radio number one, television number two. Thereafter, I am in the background and watching what is going on. And she said, whatever I was going to do, she will be delighted, and she was sure that the SSP will be delighted to have of this program. I want to thank you very much for giving this return. So the chairman had the first public forum in the state in 1992. I think that August well. Not only for the state, but for all of us. Mr. God's brother, looking up at being somebody who succeeds in rousing people up. I am not going to perform that function today. I want to confirm that I snatched the microphone away from him. I think we were at the Mushinoku government doing some work for the census. He kept talking about me when all he had to do was to mention my name as the rest of months. Went on and on and on and on. And I said, okay, so we've had enough. I am serious, very much active. It's not exactly the same thing. That is me. I think the idea of public forum has gotten so very well in this country in the last few years. And it's a good development in the public service of the country that we have fora like this all over the country to give us opportunity, those of us who are in the public service and those who are not in the public service and the civil service, to widen the base of our skill, our knowledge through interaction with other people. You probably are in finance, or in education, or in health, at whatever you are in that sector. But this program is one that I have come to regard as a very useful development in the public sector because of what it basically sets out to achieve, which is training and development. And we have seen the fruit of this type of interaction and forum in many of the activities in the public sector. Let me congratulate you for not only taking part and being part of the founding of this forum, but also congratulate the state and the public service for sustaining it, because it's not one of the easiest things to organize public service forum. Having said that much, I want to perform the function assigned to me to introduce my good friend, Dr. Servuce Johnson. Dr. Johnson will be talking about democracy and the transition program. Democracy, we all know by its ordinary meaning and interpretation as the government of the people, for the people, by the people, and all that and all that. We seem to have forgotten that the genesis of democracy can be traced back to Greece, where the Greeks met and discussed the issues that affected their lives. It has then gone into what we now know as democracy. Formation of government, elections, most importantly, and meeting at assemblies, you have already heard. Meeting at assemblies to decide the lives of the people, what would happen to them. That to me is democracy. And Sure Shepherd has more to say about that. But when you want to talk about the transition program, and you become specific, and you're talking about the Federal Republic of Nigeria, why transition? Why must there be a program? We transited from there to where anyway. I have had the benefit and privilege and freedom of sharing interaction and discussions with Dr. Servuce Johnson. I want to assure you that this gentleman, who will be 38, as I committed, Dr. Johnson, who will be 38 very soon, is, as we all know, the head of the Department of Political Science at the Lagos State University. I have had very, very sessions with him in this very complex on LTPA, what we be discussing with other colleagues of ours on his, the issues involved in democracy, transition, the need for a true transition from what used to be democracy as we knew it into a new political culture. I can assure you that the set of this into a very stimulating lecture. He has impressed me by his dynamism, the depth of his knowledge of the subject that he's going to talk about, because I've been part of hours and hours of television and radio programs with me analyzing this issue. Dr. Servuce Johnson was educated in Lagos, Abeokuta, and Ibadan. He is widely read. When he's a scholar, he indeed is a scholar, and I respect him too, as a scholar. He has presented academic papers, scholarly papers at various seminars and lectures and so on, all over the country. He has contributed a lot into the academic evolution of the country in terms of the number of books that he has written on his special life. With us in the commentator's world, we have this tendency to go on and on and on, especially when a football match lasts for 90 minutes. And if you're unlucky, it goes into extra time. And if you're unlucky, it goes into penalty shootout. Lucky, so on. I will no longer bore you or impose myself on you. Let's get down to the business of today. Democracy and the transition program. Dr. Servuce Johnson.
The Honorable Speaker of the number one legislator in Nigeria today, the Secretary of the Government, our special guest, Professor Servuce, newly appointed Director General, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me state here that I've worked closely with Chief and I found him a very good father. People talk of sweet mother, they never have a good father. I'd like to go straight into the paper. The title is Democracy and the Transition Program. The need for effective governance is not perfect. It is the means of governance that has been controversial. For there are many forms of governance which exist. Mainly, we have the monarchy, we have aristocracy, we have oligarchy, we have totalitarianism, we have authoritarianism, we have militarism and democracy, to mention a few. Different experiences are made of sort of leaders to settle for adjectives to qualify their governance. That adjective is democracy. The ex-war Communist Party of the Soviet Union, the CPSU, practiced democratic centralism. The other thing that is attracting all the attention of the Western world is also practicing democracy, all because we have any political party in Russia. A young man is living to practice democracy. I'm sure if you ask Mobutu Sese Seko, is practicing democracy. Somebody has described the Babangida administration as democratic militarism. Thus, the concept democracy is better understood as an adjective rather than a noun. It is an adjective whose interpretation depends on the user. As a noun, there should be a standard conceptualization. As an adjective, democracy can be achieved by any country or society. As a noun, it is an ideal that can only be patterned after and hoped for. It profits little to discuss democracy as an adjective. Consequently, an attempt is made at explaining as a noun in concrete terms. It is noteworthy that many leaders are using democracy to qualify their governance for the generations like grassroots democracy, elite democracy, coastal democracy, liberal democracy, social democracy, and many other democracies. The question is, what is democracy now as a noun? The word democracy is derived from two Greek words, like a chairman has told us. Demos meaning people and Christian meaning to rule. Thus, simply put, democracy is rulership by the people. The people are said to govern themselves if everyone is involved in the process of governance. There is a paradox here. Everyone cannot be governor. Yes, everyone has to rule everybody according to democracy. Cohen states this paradox clearly when he says, the concepts, rule and governing, are relational. There is no ruler without rules. Fluno in 1971 recognizes this. He says that, for the more one looks at various democratic regimes in the nations of the world, the more slippery and amorphous become the essential elements in their numerous schemes to achieve an orderly kind of freedom and communal participation. In the middle of the conceptual confusion, look at 1976, insinuated that each country regards itself as a democracy and is indignant at the pretensions of its rivals, which also describes itself as democracy and maintains that every other country must be fraudulent to its claimants. In the end, we say that the term democracy is meaningless. An honorific title which each country applies to itself in the same way. The communists and capitalists use it, liberals and socialists, republicans and marxists. The confusion of democracy lingers on with different kinds of explanation. It is the numerous ways of using that have compounded its understanding. Satura in 1962 noted that it is our way of using the words democracy and democratic government that brings about the greatest confusion. Unless these words are clearly defined and their definitions are agreed upon, people will live in an inextricable confusion of ideas, much to the advantage of demagogues and despots. Sakurai says that of many political terms, democracy is omnis definition and periculosa, that is, it is dangerous to define it. Apart from its descriptive and denotative function, democracy has a normative and persuasive function, resulting in a twofold problem of definition: what democracy is and what it ought to be. Though difficult or dangerous, the issue of definition has to be resolved, revolving around democracy, popular sovereignty, equality and self-governance. These concepts, properly analyzed, may eventually describe democracy. The practicalization of it requires majority rule as the first principle. The most important factor in democracy is participation. Everybody is supposed to participate, at least in policy formulation. In the participatory process, three dimensions of democracy have been distinguished. One, the breadth of democracy, the depth of democracy, and the range of democracy. These determine the extent of participation of the community members on different subjects. Given this presence, Cohen observed that democracy, like most other affairs in the world of human society, is a crucial matter of degree on many levels. The crucial questions to be answered in appraising democracy are: and not where is it and where is it not, but where democracy is the professed aim and idea, how broad and deep is it, and upon what issues is really operating. This position is relevant to policy formulation process. Fortunately, we have the honorable speaker here. The degree of its democratization should interest scholars rather than know whether it is democratic or not. Perhaps the instruments of democracy can help in shifting the emphasis on determination to the extent of its meaning. One of the instruments of democracy is majority rule. The whole idea of democracy is based upon decision-making by the whole community. In many cases, not everybody can be involved in taking the decision for the whole community, hence the need for the majority rule. The concept of majority rule is, however, ambiguous. The word majority connotes 50% plus 1 in the community, but in many cases has not been distinguished from plurality, which consists of the largest single part of the community. Majority rule and plurality rule are different. For instance, plurality rule may facilitate the minority to rule because at the time of count, it has the highest number of votes. But majority rule allows for more than 50% of the whole population to dominate. To meander through the shortcomings of the plurality rule and the majority rule, there are rules like 2/3 or 3/4 majority rule. Also of importance is the need to determine the majority of who in the community. Clearly, everybody does not vote in the community for various reasons: age, legislation, lukewarm attitude, and the like. Not more than 10% of the population may be involved in the voting, and a simple majority of that might have taken decisions for the remaining 90%. Another instrument of democracy is representation. The ideal of democracy is that all members of the community are supposed to take part in the decision-making process. This might not be possible in many communities of large numbers. For instance, the 100 million people of Nigeria cannot all take a decision. Apology to MPC, we don't know the exact population. Therefore, there is a need for representation of the various segments of the population. The representatives are elected for a particular period and still take cue from the various advice sent to them by their constituent members. This, perhaps, may be the weakness of the representation as an instrument of democracy. The representatives in many instances have been seen to follow their own assessment of the situation, hence their personal judgment based on the personal conviction, contrary to the tenets of democracy. Rousseau saw this position in England and wrote that the people of England regard itself as free, but is greatly mistaken. It's free only during the election of members of parliament. As soon as they are elected, slavery overtakes it, and it is not. It should be noted that democracy is not just electing the representatives, but also informing them of the wishes of the electorate long after the election. For democracy to succeed, there are certain conditions to be met, and these figures engage our attention for now. Scholar in 1971 distinguished 5 kinds of conditions of democracy. 1. The material conditions of democracy, the constitutional conditions of democracy, the intellectual condition of democracy, the psychological condition of democracy, the protective conditions of democracy. These conditions are somehow known by many people, but vaguely. Therefore, there is a need to articulate on them for clarity. The material conditions of democracy can be subdivided into 3, namely environmental conditions, mechanical conditions, and economic conditions of democracy. The environmental conditions involve surrounding topographical and climatic barriers to democracy. Modern technology has helped a long way along this line. Mechanical conditions entail giving participatory material, including ballot boxes, filing cabinets, offices, and the like. Elections must be held at regular intervals, paying attention to details. Economic conditions ensure that there should be some level of well-being before members of the community can participate. This is true to a very great extent, as it will be very difficult for democracy to thrive without it. The constitutional conditions of democracy include political freedoms and freedom of speech. Political freedom is giving members of the community equal opportunities to participate in the decision-making process to the best of their ability. Freedom of speech can be subdivided into freedom to propose and freedom to oppose. Freedom to propose and freedom to oppose. Both require entrenchment in the Constitution so that a despotic-oriented leader may not usurp the people's right to propose or oppose. To silence opposition and thereby kill initiative, to propose as witnessed in Nigeria in recent times is a negation of democratic abuse. The intellectual conditions of democracy have been described as those which make possible the application of the citizens' rational capacity to their common problems. They can be subdivided into 1, the provision of information, 2, the education of citizens, that's for master, and 3, the development of the act of conference. To make possible the cooperative application of intelligence to community problems, adequate information is required for sound reasoning by members of the community. Many governmental actions are shrouded in secrecy, which deters democracy. This is more common in the area of foreign policy, which is necessitated by strategies and tactics. It may be emphasized that secrecy is anti-democratic. Government says that the people's right to know, PRTK, is a prerequisite for citizens' participation in the government activities in order to formulate their preferences. For members of the community to be able to analyze the information given, there is a need for political education of the people. This is the condition for democracy. Democracy without proper intellectualism is an absurdity. The psychological conditions of democracy consist of a complex of dispositions and attitudes that must be manifested by individual members of the community if democracy is to function. Fallibilism, a willingness to compromise, a capacity for self-restraint when holding power are only examples of the personal traits democracy requires in general measure. These traits are very important, yet difficult to decipher, cultivate, or even maintain. Citizens have to be experimentally minded, flexible, realistic, compromising, tolerant, objective, and confident. The protective conditions of democracy are perhaps the most important to African democracy. The protective conditions can be subdivided into protection against external attacks and protection against internal attacks. The external attack can be real war waged by another nation or propaganda against the ideals of democracy. In either case, a full repulsion is the answer. The government functionaries should not be left alone, but every member of the community must be involved. In case of a war, general mobilization could be done. The internal attack on democracy is more common than the external one. In other developed countries, this attack comes in the form of coup d'etats. The solution is also equal resistance by the people. Naturally, the Constitution has a provision against such uprising, but only for abortive ones. Stronger than the Constitution is a refusal to obey those who have forced their way to power, irrespective of their arguments. The reasoning behind the discussion of democracy in its ramifications is for us to know what the term entails, its instruments and place of positions. We now need to know what grassroots democracy is. Grassroots democracy. The prefix grassroots denotes the participation of the masses in the political process. Participatory democracy is perhaps not new in the story of politics. Some scholars have identified it as opposing elite democracy. John Dewey believes that democracy is primarily a human choice. The political pivot rests on the pivot of social consensus for development because of the presence of freedom, equality, and universal functions. Peter Bashrash supports participatory democracy when he sees it as the essence of self-development and the foundation upon which a free society rests. He believes in having meaningful community decisions. A situation is thus created between elitist democracy and participatory democracy. The latter is not deep-rooted and has not been proved to be self-developed. The former still dominates, that is, there is democracy, and pushes the electorate to the background. In essence, mass participation that necessarily involves grassroots democracy is still deficient, even though attractive. It is with a view to correcting this anomaly in Nigeria that led to the October 7, 1989 declaration of grassroots democracy. For elitist democracy appears to have taken the country completely in the Fourth and Second Republic and ended up in disaster. In order to avoid the same pitfall this time around, the government opted for grassroots democracy. It has been argued that grassroots democracy connotes the movement of control from the bottom of the socio-economic ladder to the top. Thus, anybody who has to be at the top of the political ladder has to identify with the rural electorate. Nobody joins from the top, but from the bottom of the hierarchy, thereby ensuring that the needs of every stratum of the society is known and eventually taken care of. However, it is essential to tread with caution at this juncture. Grassroots control of democracy as opposed to urban elite control may not necessarily mean mass control. The inequalities at the level of the masses deny them the aggregation of opinion for effective articulation. The wherewithal to hold party congress meetings for consultation may be lacking, thereby denying them that vital forum. The resultant effect is for a village elite to fill the gap by providing facilities that will ensure the gathering of people and softly or aggressively present his position to the outside world as the aggregate opinion of the masses. This situation favors the already established money bag in the urban area, who simply places his resources in the village or local elite and garners unreserved support. Some governmental activities have coincidentally supported this position, while the establishment of the People's Bank will have bridged some gaps, albeit limited. The establishment of community banks has allowed the local or village elite to further entrench himself in the community. The local elite gather together to float a community bank, perhaps with the support of the urban mentors, as well as the federal government's collateral of environmental. The elite moves further away from the supporters and has capacity to organize and direct them even against their wishes, which becomes greater than it used to be. Nigerian grassroots democracy is rooted in the participation of the two established political parties, National Republican Convention and Social Democratic Party. One wonders if grassroots democracy can be effectively nurtured in the two parties alone. Political parties are supposed to establish and maintain national authority and legitimacy, moderate social conflict and promote political consent, aggregate and articulate interest within society, provide structures for citizen participation, act as vehicles for social change, initiating and supporting public policy, serve as mechanism for popular representation, recruit and train upcoming leaders, select devices for administrative personnel, offer governmental alternative options, inform the electoral public, provide campaign support for political candidates, serve as the link between government and the people, and bribe, simplify, and stabilize the political process. We wonder if these two political parties have been up to the function of political parties that we have just enumerated. From the enumeration above, it is doubtful that the two parties in Nigeria can include the responsibility of nurturing grassroots democracy for the country. One important factor is the mode of formation of the two parties' interests. It was imposed by government on the recommendation of the political group. This is rather abnormal, for the two parties' interests normally evolve. In many states, they are not easy to distinguish from multi-party interests because they exist alongside the major parties, a number of small groups or third parties. Basically, there are 5 important sources of the two-party system in a political process. But ironically, Nigeria's two-party system was not caused by any of these factors, but by the marching orders of the military. These factors are the social sector, few dividing issues, 2 ideological camps, the existence of broker parties, and the electoral system. The position of the system in Nigeria may be a sort of challenge to grassroots democracy in the future. It may be seen as undemocratic. Democracy is the people's participation in the decision-making process. As Disraeli puts it, the political party is an organized opinion and is the engine room for democracy. However, the government-created parties are neither organized opinions nor the aggregation and articulation of the people's interests. In the parties, they continue are unabated because of their mode of formation. The accusations and counter-accusations which characterize the party's gubernatorial primaries are pointers to the restlessness of the leadership in the two parties. According to the President's speech of October 7, 1989, government will work, I'm quoting President now, government will work to raise the political consciousness of the people, stimulate their enthusiasm using appropriate organs, including the Directorate for Social Mobilization and sponsored ownership agencies. This is to say that qualified members of local government who register for membership of any of the parties. The government is to fund the two parties, thereby eliminating the influence of money bags. Every aspirant is to start from his ward and progress through various stages to the national level. This process is likely to have grassroots control on the eventual leaders and also serve as a reminder to them of their political basis. This is likely to stimulate the political process to grow from below, from grassroots participation by all at the rudimentary level of importance is the trust. This structure does not depend on personalities, but prepares the man to go ahead and accept leadership responsibilities. This will eliminate the old policies of colonial authoritarianism of the Fourth and Second Republic, where political leaders simply floated in the urban areas and neglected the rural areas. The Babangida administration also took note of the need to educate the political leaders as well as the electorate and the establishment of the Center for Democratic Studies. So we of incorporating a functional level of democratic attitude in our people. The free interpol of CDS and DSS, Center for Democratic Studies and Directorate for Social Mobilization, operating in full capacity is expected to mobilize the people on the one hand to the fullness of their consciousness and teach them democratic tenets for the sustenance of democracy. The sustenance of the masses without adequate education is very dangerous to the system. It is noteworthy that grassroots democracy has its inherent problems which are presently discussed. Grassroots democracy is presented obviously to alert and generate interest in the generality of Nigerians in the political process of the country. The snag here is that the generality of Nigerians may not take it seriously. Thus, the first major problem of grassroots democracy is its non-acceptance by the literate and its non-existence to the illiterate. In essence, the elite and the masses may in the long run ignore grassroots democracy. The elite on the one hand seems to behave as if the grassroots democracy concept does not exist. The masses on the other hand are actually oblivious of its existence. As earlier mentioned, social inequalities may affect the reaction of the masses that grassroots democracy actually targets. The absence of basic infrastructural facilities like water, electricity, healthcare, and even jobs in the rural areas have ensured the migration of young people capable of challenging the local elites. Such young people have a stake in the well-being of the larger system and their rural setting in particular, but their absence from the rural areas will clearly jeopardize the free flow of innovation at the rural level. In their absence, grassroots democracy is almost meaningless with the illiterate. FDC appeared in 1961 respectively in response to the creation of regions by the Marxist Constitution. The parties in the Second Republic were not much different from those of the First Republic. They were tied as follows: MPN for MPC, UPN for AG, NPP for NPNC, PRP for NEPU, Northern Element Progressive Union, and GMPP for Borno Descendant Association. Thus, we simply witness the grouping and regrouping of political parties in both republics, with personalities playing the dominant roles. In essence, Nigerian political parties do not have a history of grassroots mobilization. This is the psychological orientation of politicians in Nigeria, new breed or old breed. Therefore, to believe that it will change with NRC and NTP is to be very optimistic against reality. The use of local government as agents of grassroots democracy has also been considered by the present administration. It is believed that local governments will service democracy through participation, discussion, and education.
It is also believed that they possess resource organs to ensure an enhanced citizenship participation in policy formulation and implementation. However, a counter-argument is that local governments can never serve as good basis for grassroots democracy or the realization of democracy at the national level. Local government officers tend to forget their electorate soon after elections. This may have affected the attitude of villagers towards democracy by asking for gratification before voting. The mentality and process of center-periphery development or off-bottom development destroys the establishment of grassroots democracy. You understand what we mean by center-periphery? That is from the center of the town to the rural areas, and periphery center from the rural areas to the town. Nigerian governments tend to prefer development from the center to the periphery and not vice versa. This again is a negation of the concept of grassroots democracy. It was the UPN that had as one of its cardinal programs rural integration. Babangida's administration has since established and nurtured deeply to the core of rural minimal development. Applied conversely, grassroots will ensure periphery-center development. This perhaps will remove Nigeria as a monoproduct country. The institution of traditional rulers in rural areas may pose some stumbling blocks in the path of grassroots democracy. The traditional rulers may not desire that such effective consciousness being taught their subjects because questions affecting their position, procedure, and tenure may be asked. A careful exposition of the meaning and attributes of both institutions of traditional and rulership and democracy reveals that both appear to be conflicting and largely incompatible. First, there is conflict in the procedure for the selection of a traditional ruler on the one hand and a democratic leader on the other hand. Second, the selection of a traditional ruler is an elitist affair, being the exclusive right of a small group of kingmakers themselves representing a few prominent families. In a democracy, however, the masses are effectively the ultimate deciders in the selection of leaders, unlike in the former system where they are effectively excluded from participating in the process of leadership recruitment. Thirdly, the source of authority of a traditional ruler differs from that of a democratically elected leader. While a traditional ruler derives his authority and legitimacy from the force of traditional divinity, a democratically elected leader derives his from the force of law, which makes it rational. Firstly, the institution of traditional rulership revolves around an individual who tends to monopolize and exercise political power for life. There is no arrangement for political change of leadership to guarantee a leadership that is responsive to the needs and subject to the control of its people. The consequence of this is that traditional rulers may not be helpful in the establishment of grassroots democracy. Yet, if ignored, they are capable of disrupting the whole exercise with ease. Let us try and look at Babangida's administration and the transition process, the journey towards 1992. We shall be looking at the Babangida's administration and the transition program, the journey towards 1992. Since assuming the reins of power on August 27, 1985, President Babangida has left no stone unturned in his effort to return the country to civil rule from 1992, as the promise on January 10, 1986. Thus, the administration drew up a 5-year transition timetable beginning from the third quarter of 1987 to October 1, 1992. The President inaugurated the 17-man political bureau with the following terms of reference. 1. Review Nigeria's political history and identify the basic problems which have led to a failure in the past and suggest ways of solving and coping with these problems. 2. Identify the basic philosophy of government which will determine goals and serve as a guide to the activities of government. 3. Gather, collate, and evaluate the contributions of Nigeria to the search for a viable political future and provide guidelines for the achievement of the consensus objectives. And 4. Deliberate on other political problems as may be referred to from time to time. The Bureau for over 12 months organized debates, workshops, seminars, and so on all parts of Nigeria, trying to establish the real wishes of the generality of Nigerians. It came to the conclusion that there was a need for a new social and political system that would be self-reliant, just, democratic, and durable. Since the basic principles of the new social order were self-reliance, social justice, and equity in distribution, the Bureau logically opted for the socialist mode of production and the two-party system. The Bureau's recommendation of the two-party system is not only structurally effective, but also intellectually and institutionally faulty. For instance, the imposition of a two-party system was firstly rejected by the 1976 Constitution Drafting Committee on the following grounds. This is a system we cannot possibly legislate for. In societies with a two-party system, such a system has been a product of historical growth. It may be that Nigeria, over time, will develop a two-party system, but we cannot legislate for it. The compelling argument in favor of the two-party system, according to the Bureau, was a scientific one, namely that although the one-party system was operated in both the First and Second Republics, party politics always had gravitated towards multi-party politics, always had gravitated towards a two-party system. For instance, at the time of the collapse of the First Republic in the 1960s, there were two major blocks of alliances, the Northern Nigeria Alliance and the NNPA formed by the MPC, NNDP, and the Allies, and OGA from NCS, AG, and the Allies. Similarly, by 1983, the two major blocks, NPN, the ruling party which at that time has splinter groups from other parties led by, similarly, by 1983, the two major blocks, NPN 1, the ruling party at that time had splinter groups from other groups, and the other side was called PPA, which was from NDP and UPN. As far as these arguments could look like, it lacks intellectual critical evaluation because both the foreign bodies tended towards a one-party state. For example, the NPN that won 7 states in the 1979 election was able to win 12 or 13 states in the 1983 election. And by the time the soldiers struck in late 1983, it has dawned on everybody that the country was becoming a one-party state through NPN. Nobody wanted to be in the opposition for the real thing. Then, it perhaps might have culminated into the writing of the book by General National Integration and Constitution, one party system for Nigeria, by the architect of the Second Republic, General So, even though it is true that there has always been a two-party tendency, the character of the divide between the parties does not suggest that the development was healthy. Presumably, this is the major reason why fears have been expressed that the two parties in the Third Republic could easily follow the North-South division or because of the political sensitivity of religion at the present, the Christian-Muslim divide. CDS has come out with a paper to say that there is nothing that looks like that there can never be a North-Side Jacoto. Well, time only can allow us. Gubernatorial elections are all for us to analyze. The two-party system with all the necessary caution taken may prove more workable than the previous system, but the question remains, can it sustain democratic neutrality? Will it, for example, make elections less warlike? Will it better the lives of the hungry and diseased millions of Nigeria? Will it reduce the desperation of the bourgeoisie and the nouveau rich to plunder the state and feather their nets? Will it finally give practical meaning to the notion of popular sovereignty? Will it prevent another military coup d'etat? These are fundamental questions which underline the problems of peripheral capitalist states like Nigeria. Of course, one cannot reasonably expect that a two-party system per se, or even democratic federalism per se, will solve the myriad of problems, but only the Almighty God. On the autonomy of the name, without any iota of doubt, the National Electoral Commission has become so potent in the hands of government. In the white paper of the Postal Bureau's report, the government accepted in paragraph 187BH that the tenure of office of the chairman and members of the NEP shall be 5 years in the first instance and renewable for another 5 years only. The first chairman, Professor Awa, did not spend 2 years before he was removed. The appointment of his successor, Professor Servuce, also violated paragraph 186F1 of the Political Bureau's recommendation that the next chairman should not be less than 50 years old. It was after Servuce's appointment that newspapers made it public that the new chairman was less than 50 years of age, and the government quickly amended the decree setting up less than government accepted the political bureau's recommendation that next responsibilities shall be 1. Recognition and registration of the two political parties. 2. Organization and conduct of all elections. 3. Monitoring and financing of political parties and political campaigns. And 4. Deciding on the basis of prevailing circumstances the total amount in public funds to be made available to the political parties. The violation relates especially to the first function of NEC, which is to recognize and register the two parties. The AFRC developed this function, limiting NEC's involvement to that of recommending political associations. NEC supposedly cancelled the authentic candidates of political parties at a time when party rankings were in the course. Equally, NEC has amended the political timetable many times. Not only was the 1989 Constitution a virtual copy of its 1979 predecessor, it was also a military constitution. For instance, some no-go areas were outlined for the Constituent Assembly members. Areas where they were barred from deliberating upon such as federalism, foreign policy, and some others. The student union body was not represented in the drafting of the Constitution, more so the working class was infinitesimally represented. Moreover, fundamental areas in the draft Constitution, such as clause 1.4, which illegalizes schools in Nigeria, 15.1, which provides welfareism for the country, were both expunged from the final Constitution. In essence, out of 14 new drafts, 7 of which made up 50% of the Constitution, were either amended, rejected, or expunged by the military administration. The question then is, whose constitution is it? Military or civilian? The dissolution of the 13 political associations can be seen as deliberate attempts by the government. For instance, stringent measures were stipulated for them to satisfy by the NEC within a short time. These associations were asked to produce passport photographs of all members, organize and keep staff offices in all the 5,575 wards of Nigeria. Even in the United States, these requirements are not made on the political party. Ironically, none of the present two parties were asked to meet these requirements. Even up to today, most of the offices of the two parties are still under construction. The imposition of the SDP and NRC on October 7, 1990 by the president was not only anti-democratic, anti-Nigeria, predetermined, mechanical, and organistic, but also a means to institutionalize the military into Nigerian politics. The imposition is against any of the 3 categories of party commissions. The president's activities also reveal and enforces the fact that he is the 4th military president of Nigeria. He dissolved the AFRC April 1989, instituted structural adjustment program which has no alternatives. He was once Minister of Defense, and most important offices and establishments like the Central Bank, Budget and Planning are under the president. The constitutions and manifestos of the two parties were written by the 19 wise men of the AFRC and the NEC. Grammatically and ironically too, the constitutions and manifestos of the two parties were then synthesized ideas of the banned starting political associations. Moreover, a critical examination of these documents reveals differences in nothing else but names. The two documents say the same things in different phraseology. The issue of one being a little bit to the right and the other a little to the left of the center is now very clear. The government itself has not proclaimed which of the parties is to the left and which is to the right. Chairman, permit me to talk a little about gubernatorial elections and state legislatures. Mr. Chairman, permit me to quote extensively from a lecture delivered by the Director General of the Center for Democratic Studies, Professor Omar Moru, after the last gubernatorial election. He stated, and I quote, "The last election was conducted in a free and fair atmosphere. The outcome of the electoral process is, in my view, a sophisticated political act, which can only come from a sophisticated voting population. They are all sophisticated people who prove part of this act of the voter. They must then produce a sophisticated outcome, that is democratic governance." He continues, "Evidence shows that our voters are becoming very sophisticated. Elected politicians who are the outcome of such voting should also be very sophisticated. The center wants governors and assemblymen who respect the wishes of our people, who in one breath decide for party A in assembly And in another breath, for Party B, governor-elect, this is a sophisticated act of a sophisticated voter. I believe there is a need to analyze beyond the level of the sophistication of the voter. There are three states that readily come to mind in this kind of discussion: Lagos, Katsina, and Cross River State. Yes, there is the Osun State with an LDP governor, an LDP majority House of Assembly member having problems among themselves. Apparently, the governor and the LDP majority members were not in the same camp in the party due to historical position of the party. No, we see the chief executive and legislators of the state warring against each other, yet they are from the same party. The cause is traceable to government formation of the party with two opposing factions tolerating each other within the party but not united. The case for Lagos State has produced an official third party, normally referred to in Lagos as the Social Republican Convention. This third party won the Mushin local government chairmanship election, the Alimosho chairmanship election, and the governorship of Lagos. SRC comprises FDP members who declared against opposing factions in their party and consequently voted for NRC. The two major factions in FDP have enjoyed the privilege of constituting themselves into this third party. My projection is that given the unforgiving nature of Nigerian politicians, NRC will reign in Lagos for a long time. Already we have been told that two commissioners of the governor's cabinet are from FDP. This represents our position. Perhaps we should call it state consensus. The voting pattern of the State House of Assembly since its inception has been intriguing. It has witnessed the 4 NRC members voting along with the faction of the LDP. It will be further interesting to witness the voting pattern if the state consensus fails along the line. One does not envisage impeachment of our governor in Lagos State for various reasons. 1. Ethnic politics surrounding governorship election in the state. 2. The degree of lobbying can be involved in case of an uproar. 3. The effect of amendment in decree that can be used to silence an opposing faction if widely used. And 4. The personality of the incumbent government. Conclusion, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I will fail if I do not mention that the confidence and consistency required of democracy. Sorry, let me take that again. I will fail if I do not mention that the confidence and consistency required if democracy is to thrive have not been provided by the military. It's left to the incoming civilians to build confidence and stability in whatever form of democracy they inherit. The bottom line is that the civil servants remain indispensable and are, as a result, for the foundation of our state. Thank you for your patience.
Because as we say in my own specialized field, please give him a round of applause. That lasted only 55 minutes, that's all, no more, 55. But I'm sure it was very stimulating. I don't doubt in my mind that Dr. Johnson has raised a number of issues that I'm sure you've taken notes of and would want to discuss exhaustively, but for factors, not democracy, other factors. But it's only compelling and necessary for us to examine some of the issues that Dr. Johnson has raised, because they're so vital to the democratic process that we are all committed to as it is now. I do not want to take any more of the time by attempting a summary. It's fresh, just listening to you. But shall we examine issues like his definition of democracy itself? How democracy can survive the necessary environments for the survival of democracy. given our own cultural, traditional, and other factors in the country. What is the difference between plurality and democracy? I was thrilled. That is, I thought the man was so thin. But when he started talking about plurality and democracy, I thought plurality and majority. I thought it's not exactly. What are the conditions that will make this our democracy to flourish? Grassroots democracy took so much of its time. I'm interested in that because of what it means to all of us. This definition of grassroots democracy and whether it can succeed given our own circumstances in the country. It had something to say about the two political parties they were talking about. He ended up by calling what we have now in Lagos a social democratic convention. An enlightening discussion for as long as we have time. Do indicate it is a discussion. We can ask him for clarification, but that doesn't stop any of us from making our own views known on this one. On the issues that have been raised by the judges. Once again, we congratulate the program. Very, very exciting.